That afternoon, the scorching sun beat down on Ouagadougou, its rays shimmering across the dusty red streets. President Ibrahim Traoré had just finished a surprise visit to a local school. No reporters, no ceremonies, only him and a few guards quietly observing the everyday lives of students and teachers. His convoy was ready, engines humming softly, prepared to return to the presidential residence. But just then, something caught his eye at the corner of the street. Leaning against a cracked wall, among the rush of passers-by, sat a man with a tin cup before him. His clothes were torn and faded, his hair streaked with gray, his face carved by years of hardship. People walked past without a glance, as if he were part of the pavement itself. Ibrahim frowned. There was something about that face, hauntingly familiar. A faint memory from childhood suddenly stirred inside him. He opened the car door, startling his guards. "Wait here," he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for refusal. The man looked up, squinting against the sunlight. His dry lips trembled as he whispered, "Ibrahim." Ibrahim's chest tightened. He quickened his pace, studying the thin, weary face. And then he recognized him. "Musa," he breathed. Yes, it was Musa, his old school friend, once a bright student full of dreams. But now, Musa was only a shadow of that past, reduced to begging on the city streets. Musa struggled to rise, knees trembling, tears brimming in his eyes. You still remember me?" Ibrahim gripped his shoulder gently, eyes heavy with emotion. "I never forgot, Musa. Tell me, what happened to you?" In the quiet of the presidential residence, Musa sat hunched before Ibrahim. A steaming tray of food lay between them, its aroma making his eyes sting. He ate slowly, cautiously, as if the taste might vanish at any moment. Ibrahim poured water, his voice gentle but firm. "Musa, you were once the brightest in our class. What happened to you?" For a long moment, Musa said nothing. His hands trembled, his eyes filled with tears. "It all began a few years ago." He spoke of his days as a school teacher in Bobo Dioulasso. Life was simple but steady. He had built a small house with his own hands, then married Stella. At first, their home was filled with laughter, but soon, Stella changed. She grew distant, secretive, and finally, Musa discovered betrayal inside the very walls he had built. "I froze," Musa whispered, his voice cracking. "I walked away, hoping she would regret it. But instead, she looked me in the eyes and said, 'Leave this house. He is my husband now.'" Ibrahim clenched his fists, his lips tightening. "The house you built with your own sweat?" "Yes," Musa nodded, his eyes hollow. "I refused to leave. But one night, I came back and found all my belongings thrown into the yard. The lock had been changed. Neighbors turned their faces away. I had no place in my own home." He sighed, his voice breaking. "I lost my house, then my job. My savings drained away. Friends offered me shelter, but shame consumed me. So I left. Ended up under bridges, begging for scraps. Some days I ate once, other days not at all, and every night I closed my eyes, I saw her laughing with him." Musa's tears splashed onto the table, heavy with sorrow. Ibrahim's chest tightened. He reached across, placed a strong hand on his friend's shoulder, and said firmly, "No, Musa, you are not broken. Your story isn't over. From today, everything will change." The next morning, Musa woke up on a clean bed, the sheets crisp and white. Sunlight streamed through the window, and birds sang in the distance. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Just yesterday, he had curled up on the roadside. Now he was lying in the presidential residence. A servant entered carrying a breakfast tray. "Good morning, Mr. Musa. The president asked me to prepare this for you." Musa sat up quickly, still unable to believe it. He nodded softly, whispering, "Thank you, truly, thank you." After breakfast, Ibrahim appeared dressed simply. Not in uniform, not with power on display. He was just an old friend standing there, with a warm smile. "Musa," he said, "today I've arranged for you to see a doctor. Your health must come first." By noon, Musa had undergone a full checkup. He was given medicine, then taken for a haircut and shave. In the mirror, Musa hardly recognized the man staring back. Neatly cut hair, a clean face, and eyes no longer so dark. A faint spark had returned. That afternoon, Ibrahim himself drove Musa out of the capital. Down the dusty red roads, they stopped in front of a small cream-colored house with a tidy garden. "It's beautiful," Musa whispered, his eyes wide. "Whose is it?" Ibrahim placed a hand on his shoulder, smiling. "It's yours, Musa. This is your home." Musa stammered, "No, this can't be. I don't deserve it." Ibrahim looked straight into his eyes. "No one can take it from you again. I remember when I had nothing. You shared books, shared bread. You believed in me before I believed in myself. Now it's my turn." Musa broke down in tears, but this time they were not tears of despair. They were tears of hope newly awakened. In the days that followed, Musa began a new life. The small house with its green garden became a place where he rediscovered the peace he had long lost. Each morning he no longer woke to the noise of the streets, but to birdsong and the aroma of hot coffee, brought by a staff member from the presidential residence. One afternoon, Ibrahim came to visit him, this time with another surprise. They walked a few blocks and stopped in front of a small shop next to a secondary school. The signboard had yet to be hung, but inside there were bookshelves, tables, and boxes filled with notebooks and pens. "Musa," Ibrahim said, "this will be your shop, a bookstore and school supply store. You will manage it. I've already covered the first year's costs. I know your love for education, and I want you to pass that flame on to the next generation." Musa stood frozen, his trembling hand touching the brand new books. Memories of the old school days returned, when he used to share his own notebooks with young Ibrahim, encouraging him not to drop out. Now the circle had come full. I don't even know what to say," Musa whispered. "Don't say anything." Ibrahim placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Just begin a new chapter." On the day the shop opened, there was no fancy wine or grand orchestra, only the cheerful laughter of school children, the patter of little feet rushing in to buy pens, and the warm handshakes of neighbors. To them, Musa was no longer the beggar on the roadside. He had returned, with dignity and with a new purpose. In the weeks that followed, Musa's little shop slowly became a familiar gathering place for students in the neighborhood. In the mornings, they lined up to buy notebooks and pens. In the afternoons, many stayed behind, asking Musa to explain difficult math problems. He never refused, his eyes lighting up with joy each time he saw a student finally understand. News of Teacher Musa spread quickly. People in the community began greeting him with respect, no longer seeing him as a beggar, but as a mentor, a living example of a man who had risen from the ashes. One quiet Saturday afternoon, as Musa was arranging books on the shelf, a soft voice called from behind. "Musa!" He turned, almost dropping the book in his hands. Standing at the door was Stella, his ex-wife who had once abandoned him. Her face was pale and worn, her clothes plain, her eyes heavy with sorrow. Beside her rested a small suitcase, as if she had nowhere else left to go. "Can we talk?" Stella's voice trembled. The air inside the shop grew heavy. Musa stood silent for a long moment, then folded his arms, his gaze steady on the woman who had shattered his life years ago. "What do you want, Stella?" Her eyes brimmed with tears. "He left me. The house is gone, the money too. I have nothing left. Please let me stay, just for a while." Musa drew in a long breath, his chest tightening with memories of betrayal and pain. This was the same woman who had once thrown him out, stripped him of his home and dignity. Now she stood before him, begging for shelter.
He raised his head, his voice calm but firm.
Stella, I forgave you long ago, but I've chosen a different path now. My life is peaceful, and I will not lose that peace. You chose your road, and I have chosen mine. Stella lowered her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. Musa turned away, walking back into the shop, his heart pounding but his eyes clear with resolve. This time, he was no longer the broken man of the past. That night, after the bookshop had closed, Musa sat quietly in the small room behind it. The ticking clock mixed with memories rushing back. The day he was thrown out of his house, the mocking laughter, the long months of sleeping under bridges. But then he remembered the look in Ibrahim's eyes when he placed a hand on his shoulder. Musa, you will rise again. I believe in that. The phone rang. It was Ibrahim. She came back, didn't she? The president's deep voice filled the line. Yes, Musa whispered, but I told her no. On the other end, a smile could almost be heard. I'm proud of you, Musa. You haven't just regained a home and a job. You've regained yourself. Musa closed his eyes, a sense of relief washing over him. I once thought I had lost everything, he murmured. But what I truly needed most was my dignity. That night, Musa slept deeply. For the first time, he was no longer haunted by the past, but dreamed of the future. A future where he was not just a survivor, but someone who could give hope to those who had fallen, just as he once had. In the weeks that followed, Musa's life slowly settled into a new rhythm. His small bookshop became a familiar gathering place for students and teachers in the neighborhood. Every morning, when the little bell above the door rang, Musa welcomed each customer with a warm smile. Children came to buy pens, notebooks, and textbooks. Some of them had no money, and Musa would quietly hand over the supplies, saying only, "Just study hard, you can pay me later." Word spread quickly. The once respected school principal, now running a bookshop, was helping poor children. The community no longer saw him as a beggar, but with respect calling him Teacher Musa. One afternoon, as Musa was arranging books on the shelf, a soft voice called out behind him, "Musa." He froze, nearly dropping the book in his hand. Standing at the doorway was Stella, his former wife. Her face was gaunt, her clothes wrinkled, and the jewelry she once flaunted was gone. Beside her sat a worn-out suitcase. "Can we talk?" Stella asked, her voice small and trembling. Musa folded his arms, standing still. "What do you want, Stella?" Her eyes filled with tears. I have nowhere else to go. The man I chose over you, he abandoned me. He sold the house, emptied my account, and left with another woman. I've lost everything." Musa studied her in silence, memories flashing of the day she coldly cast him out of the very home he had built. "Stella," Musa said, his voice calm and steady, "I forgave you long ago, but my life is peaceful now. You chose your road, and I've chosen mine." She whispered desperately, "Please, just a room, a small room to stay." Musa drew a deep breath, then answered firmly, "I wish you well, but this is not your home anymore." Without another word, he turned back inside, his heart pounding. Yet unlike before, it no longer trembled with fear or shame. For the first time in years, Musa felt truly free. That night, Musa sat alone on his porch. The night breeze drifted softly, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers. He remembered Stella's face as she walked away, regretful, desperate. But all Musa felt was relief. His phone buzzed. It was Ibrahim. "Still awake?" the president's warm voice asked. Musa gave a small smile. "Hard to sleep." "Stella," she came back. There was a brief silence. Then Ibrahim asked, "And what did you do?" "I told her, no, this is no longer her home." On the other end, Ibrahim let out a quiet laugh, filled with pride. "That's the Musa I always knew. The strong friend who stood tall not only for himself, but to protect his dignity." Musa looked up at the starry sky. For the first time in years, he was no longer bound by the past. He had closed one door to open another, a chapter filled with hope. The next day, at the shop, streams of students arrived. A small boy handed over his worn-out notebook and asked if Musa could give him a new one. Without hesitation, Musa placed a fresh notebook in his hands. "Just promise me one thing," Musa said with a smile. "What is it, sir?" the boy asked. "Study hard. One day you will rise and help others just like I helped you today." The boy's eyes lit up, and Musa felt his heart overflow with joy. He had regained what he had lost years ago, the belief that life can always begin again. In the weeks that followed, Musa slowly rebuilt his life. The new house became more than just a shelter. It turned into a gathering place. Neighbors would stop by, sometimes for advice, sometimes just to sit under the veranda and listen to him share stories of the old days. From being abandoned on the roadside, Musa was now respectfully called Teacher Musa, not because of a title, but because his life itself had become a lesson. President Ibrahim Traoré often visited quietly, dressed in simple clothes. He would sit with his old friend at the wooden table, laughing like the days they were just boys in dusty classrooms. One evening, Ibrahim leaned closer and said softly, "You know, Musa, I can sign hundreds of decrees, but none will ever mean more than helping a friend rise from the shadows. It reminds me of what leadership truly is, not about power, but about people." Musa was speechless, tears rolling down his face, not of sorrow, but of peace. Months passed, and from Musa's story, a small education fund was born, called the Light of Hope. It supported poor students in Ouagadougou, giving them books, tuition, and most importantly, the belief that they still had a future. One blazing afternoon, Musa stood before dozens of young students, with Ibrahim seated proudly in the front row. His voice trembled as he began. "I once slept under bridges, begging for scraps. I once believed my life was over, but one man, one friend, saw me, and he did not walk away. Because of that, I stand here today, not to share pain, but to prove this truth. No matter how far you fall, you can rise again." The hall fell silent, then erupted into thunderous applause. Ibrahim smiled, his eyes glistening with pride. Musa smiled back. Their story was no longer just about friendship. It became proof that true power is not used to rule over people, but to lift them up. And sometimes, a single hand extended at the right moment can change not only a man's fate, but the future of an entire nation.